build off of what he was just saying. I want to just really quickly offer one new point of my own, and then there's been kind of a lot of rubbish that's come off of this side, so I'll just spend most of my speech addressing that to the best of my abilities. The first thing I want to say is, I think there's been some confusion. This is the point in the round, incidentally, for those of you who don't go to a lot of these debates. This is the point in the round where we kind of try to figure out what exactly has gone wrong, and who's responsible, and how do we win it back. And I think that what I want to do is just say, let's get to the bottom of this issue of restrictions. Again, it needs to be said, restrictions have a very specific denotation and a specific history. Again, they've repeatedly tried to force us into the box of saying, okay, just let everyone in. We're arguing somehow to make this a kind of Cambridge-style republic where we just let anyone who wants to come. It's not really, that's not exactly what we're arguing for. And what we're saying is that the type of restrictions that we're arguing, that we're saying should be removed, are the quotas, the systems, not right now. It took a long time before I could get one out. Again, not to be taken too illicitly. Again, the types of restrictions that we're talking about come precisely and spring precisely from the type of racist demagoguery that we've heard from the Cambridge side, the type of stuff that I think has a major socioeconomic and not to mention cultural and human rights implications. So just to get that straight, ladies and gentlemen of the House, that what we're saying on this side of the House is strictly that the type of quota systems and restrictions that President Bush tried to introduce last year, for example, with the ID Act of 2005 and so on and so forth, all in an attempt at, now that he's gone and now that the Democrats are gone from Congress, hopefully we won't see more of these, but all in an attempt at kind of ramping up this war on terror, whose effects I think we all know.
On that point.
So please, quickly.
So, am I right to understand that the genius Oxford case is basically any restriction you think is good is called a restriction, and any restriction you think is bad is called a limitation?
This is why in 1209, just to inject a bit of history, in 1209, which anniversary is creeping up on us, there was an attempt by certain scholars who couldn't cut the rigorous distinction between terms like limited and restricted to attempt to create a kind of outlaw maverick university where these sorts of distinctions aren't really addressed. What we've said all along here is that we've delineated the differences, that we're not arguing, we're not saying unlimited immigration, we're not saying open the doors, we've been more than careful to make that point, but what we're saying is that these kinds of restrictions that exist not at this time, these kinds of restrictions that exist simply should go away and be taken more seriously. Now, I'm going to take ample time because it does take a lot to get to that point. They basically have made 3 points, okay? One slightly more ridiculous than the last, and so I'm going to spend a bit of time on each. The first point, quickly.
Your version is precisely unrestricted immigration. How?
That's exactly what I said, which is not the same as unlimited. Go back to your notes. The first thing that they say, what they stand for, and I want you, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I want you not to take our side. Okay, not to take our word for it over here on the Oxford side. I want you to make us play by their rules, okay? So let's take their standards, because we give you economic theory over here, we give you philosophy, the Statue of Liberty, founding for philosophy of this country, but that's not enough for them over there. Evidently, the P and E in PP&E didn't quite make it across to Cambridge, so philosophy and economics aren't really as relevant. Let's make it purely based on the rhetoric that they gave us. They gave us what? Separation of church and state. What do they say? Ayatollah Khomeini of Iran, incidentally, where my parents emigrated from, quite secular, incidentally. But, Ayatollah Khomeini, as you can see, having had the gin and tonic before I came to this, I can tell you, I don't think we really imported our anti-alcohol or anti-female positions as Iranian expats. Nevertheless, they tell us about separation of church and state. And I would say, you're right. The voters in Virginia yesterday who voted that marriage should be defined as a relationship between a man and a woman, or, I don't know, in the voters in South Dakota who almost voted that abortion should be made illegal, all for religion, those must have been all those Indian immigrants, and all those Iranian immigrants, and all of those Bulgarian and Japanese and Chinese. There were no real homeland, unimmigrated Americans voting for those Christian values of keeping abortion, those people that attack Dr. Kevorkian and doctors performing abortion, those must all just be, I don't know, Kurds or something. So, ladies and gentlemen, holding to their own when it comes to this issue of separation of church and state. So who's actually bringing a multiplicity of different religions, different ideas, and bringing together the multiculturalism that I think is our only antidote for the type of short-sighted theocracy that is likely to take over in this country?
Point of inquisition. I'm outraged. No restrictions means no restrictions.
I'm sorry, that's on my previous point. I'm on to the next one. Now what we're talking about is, unless you want to talk about church and state. The next point I want to talk about, the next point, and I'm doing this without notes, ladies and gentlemen. This is how easy it is. This is quite how easy it is, you know what I mean? This is how easy it is. Okay, the next thing, the second thing they talk about is they talk about the issue of freedom of speech. Now, notwithstanding, ladies and gentlemen, the abhorrent behavior of the first speaker on the propositions, is that 1 minute? The first speaker on the proposition side when it came to supporting those very valuable tenets of freedom of speech. Notwithstanding those, I think if you look back, ladies and gentlemen, at what freedom of speech means, what it in fact gets at the heart, if you go back to the Constitution, it has to do precisely with the idea of bringing in a multiplicity of ideas, bringing in different viewpoints, and bringing those together, unlike, again, the type of bigoted rhetoric that we get from the Cambridge side, which seems to dictate one sort of strict originalist, and I don't even argue, accurate view of what speech ought to be in this country. The third and final point, not at this time, I'm almost done. The third and final point that they make, which is, I think, the most laughable, has to do with human rights. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll let you yourselves decide, you know, which side is kind of more on the side of human rights between the Oxford and Cambridge teams. But what's most important to recognize, I think, is that human rights have to do with just that. What do they give us on that side? They say, well, these people are coming from countries where they put girls on trial, where they, you know, oppress people. I'm almost done. Where they oppress people, so do you let him go? Do you let him go? Where they oppress people for their police. Human rights means giving those people a home and not making them stay there. That's